Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Modern Mystics podcast. I'm Jennafer.
I'm Lola. We're so glad you're here.
We really are. Today we're going to talk about kind of a phenomenon that I think most people have felt, but maybe not necessarily named. And that is, that experience when you meet somebody and you just kind of feel either like you've known them forever, even though you literally just met, or you just feel this kind of like really kind of deep connection to someone, even if you haven't met them. Maybe you see them somewhere or that kind of thing. Just kind of that kind of thing happens to a lot of people. And I think a lot of times people think that is a spiritual connection because it feels more than just like it has a purpose to it. It feels more than just I like you or you're interesting or, that kind of thing. It's got I don't know, something a little bit stronger or deeper that's kind of rooted to it. And I'm sure you've had some experience like that in your life. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about today was how sometimes those people can end up being parts of your soul family. And in kind of a digital world, which both closes our connectedness gap, but also kind of still maintains a, a pretty big gap. There can be kind of, I don't know, a little irony in that, or a little bit of a paradox where you're just feeling like more connected than ever, but also kind of isolated as well. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about what a soul family is, maybe how the digital world changes things, maybe even like signs that you found like a really aligned friend, that kind of thing, and maybe some of the challenges as well. And so that's what we're going to be chatting about today.
I am excited about this topic. I have lots of what I would say are my spiritual experiences with this topic. My husband is soul family to me. We met in a line to go to like dancing. That's how we met. And he was just in front of me with his friend and telling a joke. And I started laughing. He was just being himself. And he turned around, and the second he turned around, it was like, oh, I know you. And it was just done. That was it. That was it. And we've been together 30, oh my gosh, 30 something years. I don't know how old we are. Old, we're old. So, but that moment, I think it's carried me through lots of times where I'm like, oh my gosh, 30 years is a long time to be with one person and have everything go perfect all the time. It hasn't, right? And knowing this is a deeper connection has given me purpose in that relationship. So I think they're given to us in times of great need. Often they show up, and our soul family is here to help us grow. That's one of my favorite things that you shared. And so maybe we start there, it's not
Sounds
always
great.
easy. Soul family's not always easy.
Oh
Let's put it
gosh,
that way.
no. I think it's the same kind of energy of like when people feel like they've found their romantic partner, their romantic life partner, that they just think it's going to be easy, but it's a lot of work. And same thing with soul families. Any relationship that is worth having takes a bit of work anyway. But I loved your story because I feel like it touches upon this feeling that is more like almost like recognizing someone versus meeting them. Almost like instead of seeing a person who's new to you, it's like a person who's already familiar, that kind of feeling. And I think that's
Yes.
really lovely.
Well, and with this growth aspect, of course, your partner hopefully is someone who helps you grow through life, right?
Sure.
But I don't know. I was hesitant to talk about my relationship with Scott because I don't really believe in soulmates, but I believe in soul family. And so I want to make that distinction real quick. This is not like oh, this is the only person I could have been with. It was, oh, this is the person who I'm going to grow with through this lifetime. And we've done this in many configurations before. That's soul family, right? And some soul family, maybe you haven't. Maybe they've been kind of a fringe soul family for you. Um, at 5, I had this, I would say, pre-earth memory of picking my family, and my family had a lot of abuse and a lot of really not great things. And I can remember being like, yeah, I got that. I can handle that. It's okay. And I will love them and it won't break me. But they're not my soul family. It was, oh, I can help that other soul family out. I will play this role for them. Scott is soul family. And so we're talking about it kind of is hazy a little bit, I think, when we talk about soul family versus soulmate and our family of origin versus soul family. Those things can get convoluted for people. So I'm trying to maybe, hopefully it's clear, distinguish between those roles. I don't know.
Right? There is a difference. There's a difference. But I think sometimes people think soulmates are, well, they conflate that with the one. People ask that a lot when they're getting readings, like, but is this my person? I literally had someone say, but is this my wife? And and I was like, well, do you want to marry this person? That's kind of
Right.
important. But I feel like there's a lot of that kind of, I don't know, like a destiny sort of feeling or that kind of thing whenever you say the word soulmate. But I feel like soulmates are just kind of deeper friendships, right? Like we have kind of acquaintances and we have, I don't know, surface level friendships and we have good friends. And then, I don't know, soulmates feel very aligned, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be romantic. I have literally read for people whose pets are their soulmates or whose best friends or their cousin or whatever is their soulmate. Like, not that they go running off into the sunset together, but it's like, someone that they just really can be themselves with, really can like align with and really find a lot of mutual support with.
I had an astrology teacher whose disabled son is her soulmate. And he's nonverbal and she gets him and she can
Mhm.
translate for him. And she's talked about and she's looked at the astrology. There's a type of astrology called evolutionary astrology where we can see those kinds of deep, meaningful soulmate level relationships. And her son is her soulmate. And I like that. I like that definition of soulmate. I'm fine with that definition of
Yep.
soulmate. So I agree with you. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily a romantic partner, the one. And that's what we want to make clear. That's not what we're talking about today.
Absolutely. And I also think that soul family, they don't necessarily have to be in your life your whole life for them to be part of your soul family. They don't need to be born into your your actual like genetic family. But they certainly can be. In my understanding, soul family is just people that are here to support or even challenge, or maybe even kind of be a little mirror for you on your own personal growth. So it isn't necessarily that they're here to just cheer you on no matter what. Sometimes they'll challenge you. Sometimes they'll say, "Is that really what you want to do? Are you sure that's working for you?" That kind of thing. And so I feel like there's they're not always easy. I but I and they're not even always comfortable, but I do also wanna say that they're not super toxic either. They're supposed to be, overall, like, for your growth versus to make you feel smaller or something like that. Toxic or abusive relationships sort of reduce someone, and soul family connections are there to help people grow, and not in spite of them, but because of their influence in your life, and I think that's really important.
And you could have a soul family member that chooses to become abusive. That means they don't get to be near you in this lifetime.
Yes.
Soul family also has the option to choose not great behavior. And just because, like, I looked at Scott and recognized Scott, if at any point Scott had chosen to be abusive, controlling, a harmful relationship for me, I wouldn't still be with him. That's a choice each person has to make to stay in healthy connection with others, no matter whether they're soul family or not. We're not suggesting because someone's soul family, you have to keep them around.
True.
That's
Yeah, I think everyone can still have boundaries. Everyone can still decide what works for them or what doesn't work for them, and that includes your soul family. I don't know how everything works, but I feel like with soul family, we sort of plan like before we're even born, like,
yes.
can you come in and be my friend or my third grade piano teacher or my, whatever it is. Um, and there's a lot of really great, I don't know, soul family that kind of come in and out too, or that are just there for a season. But it's not something you have to go find. It's usually something that just kind of shows up, whether it's in line to go dancing or it is like in your third grade classroom or whatever. It's not something you have to be like, I've got to go find my soul family, because they're already sort of poised to be at strategic times in your life, if that makes sense. And but you still can choose them. Like you
Yep.
were saying, I don't have to deal with something if someone doesn't show up for me in a way that's healthy, if, their behavior is destructive or something like that. I think, we'll talk a lot about like kind of how to recognize those people, but just know that you can choose them. They do not have to be, okay, well, now that I'm like really aligned with you, I guess we're in it till death. It doesn't have to be quite that dramatic, if that makes sense. Some really do feel like that, but some can be just there for a season and it's totally fine. And
One
I love
of the
that.
yeah, I do too. One of the most profound, I think, soul family moments of my life, I had taken a family member to the doctor to have a procedure, and it was hours long of me sitting in a waiting area. And I am always learning something. I'm a education junkie. So I brought all these books and my computer and I'm studying and taking the current course I was working on. And I was at this little table, like almost like a booth, like a cafeteria table they had just in this hallway randomly. And I'm sitting there working. I've got AirPods in, like, clearly don't bug me, right? This lady asks if she can sit opposite me with a big bag of knitting. And I'm like, oh, sure. You want to use the table? That makes sense. She starts talking. I'm like, okay, please shut up. I'm obviously trying to work. She does not. And finally, I'm like, okay, Lola, be present with the person in front of you. You don't have to be such a self-absorbed, is this study that important to ignore another human being? Stop it. So I put my books away and we had a life-altering conversation. It was so profound, it literally changed the course of my life. I have no idea what her name is. I've never seen her again, and I never will. It was this moment, and I felt it by the end of the conversation. We got up and hugged each other, and it was, oh, this was a check-in. So family can just be a check-in
Sure.
to adjust course. She was like 85 or something. Right? This old right? I I would have never thought that was going to be a conversation that changed me in
Love
an
that
hour.
surprising element of it,
Yeah.
that it isn't necessarily, again, it's just something that kind of aligns versus you have to set it up or, create some sort of space for it or whatever. When I was in high school, I got the chance to audition for the Los Angeles um, High School for the Arts, and as a vocal student, and it was far away from my home. It was a really big commitment, and my parents were really supportive about it, which was lovely. But I got there and I knew nobody. Like literally I knew no one. And I had grown up so much with all the kids in my school, like my other high school. And I met a girl who was not even a vocal student. I think she was a violinist, or she was a orchestra, like playing an instrument student versus like a vocal student. And she just sat down next to me at lunch and started talking, and it was the easiest conversation I think I had ever had with a stranger, basically. And it wasn't just because she was reaching out, it was because she was just very connected to me and very we were both sort of in that flow, and I instantly felt like, okay, maybe I can go to the school, maybe I can do this, that kind of thing. And I
Mm.
feel like there's just I mean, I don't know if there's like some of our soul family are just little like angels that drop in, like not literal angels, but like, like little guardians, or like, safe spaces in the world that are really really welcome, because even when you have a lot of confidence in the world, or you're doing fine, maybe you're not sad or whatever, just knowing that like there's someone who really gets you is a really lovely um and very comforting and connective experience. And I loved what you were saying, because, we're always talking about how the fruits of spirituality are a little bit more peace, which I definitely had in that, and a little bit of perspective, which is what your cute knitting lady gave you. And so I think, just having conversations can be so spiritual in general, but both of those gave what was needed in the moment, and I think that's really great.
It is profound, right? Like, I feel
Yeah,
like they show up when you need them. Like, truly,
exactly.
there is a timing to it. When you were talking about that a little bit earlier, I was thinking it's almost like uh, people get hung up on this. So I'm not trying to say, uh, mm, don't take it the bad way. It's almost like there's contracts. It's almost like we said,
Yes,
okay, this will be the moment, and we, and those moments are everything aligns to make them happen because that's the moment that mattered. And
yep,
the rest of life kind of weaves and flows, but then we're going to have this moment that changes you, literally. So I think that's an essence, a defining trait of soul family. It's something that will change you in profound ways.
I
And
agree.
both of us could have ignored intuition. I could have kept studying.
Right?
You could have not had the conversation with a stranger.
Yep,
So part of it is being in the flow and trusting your intuition, which
yep,
that's part of how right?
I agree.
We've been talking about in real life, but I have, and I'm sure you have, digital experiences with soul family. So maybe we should get into that a little
Yeah,
bit.
absolutely. I think it's interesting because, both of us, literally, people just sat down next to us in those previous conversations. But um, online, there are so many like niche communities, or you could take like classes with people or be in a community with people. Um, I I made a really dear connection when I was taking a class about like being a Reiki practitioner, which is just an energy healing modality if you're not familiar with it. Um, I was in a class that was like several months long with three other people. And so all four of us grew really close, but two of us specifically, we seem to be on the same, I don't know, on the same wavelength, in the same place, and so a lot of our reactions were very similar, and we ended up becoming really good friends and almost being like reality checks for the other. So sometimes she would say like, "Okay, is this part of the class confusing for you, or does it seem too hard or easy or whatever, that kind of thing." And so it was really nice to be able to have someone else to kind of bounce things off of during the class. And then afterwards, we were able to really support each other's practices and, help. Well, first of all, share, exchange Reiki and things like that. And then also just kind of be supports to each other as we sort of started in that realm. And it's been really interesting to kind of see her progress and, still stay in touch and that kind of thing. But specifically for that particular course, it was so helpful for me, and I've never met her in person. I mean, we've Zoomed, so I know she's not, I don't know, a robot somewhere, but, but we haven't ever been in the same place because she lives, like, I don't know, 4 states away from me, so it's not,
Mhm.
I don't travel there often, or she doesn't travel here, so I've never met her in real life.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's one of the key points. I have a very similar experience with astrology. I call her my soul sister. We formed a study group when we were starting astrology studies together, and she has become this. We have deep spiritual conversations. We help each other with astrology, and it's been amazing. And I think the key here is we were both actively engaged in something that felt significant to us when we met that study partner, that soul family member that, they may travel with us for a while yet, where it's only online. It's a digital
Yes.
relationship. It's phone calls, it's Zooms, it's not in person, and yet just as profound as the in person relationships I have with soul family
I
to me.
agree. And I think I mean, there's a lot of very meaningful interactions that can happen online specifically. I know some people have found, really good friends just gaming with people or
Yes.
being on like a Reddit thread or a discussion board or something like that, or in like a group on Facebook or whatever. And so the interesting thing is that I feel like have a feeling of they sort of speak my language, or they're on the same kind of um or they're coming at things from the same place, or if they're coming at it from a different place, it's still very aligned with who you are, or it's still it's still someone you respect, or they make a difference for you.
I think that's a really important point. Um, Astrologically, Scott and I's charts are like a quarter turn from each other. So we literally go about everything in life a quarter turn, a different way. Nothing. We go about nothing in the same way. We're like almost opposites in a lot of ways. Yet, on the deepest levels, we align on everything. What we care about, our values,
Mhm.
what we're going to spend our time or energy on, those things are completely aligned. And it, it's hard to be with someone who does something opposite of you. It's not always easy, but there's a deep resonance that a soul family member has
Yes.
that is lacking maybe or isn't as profound in other relationships.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important because sometimes, especially online, you can feel sort of almost like an illusion of connection with
Mhm.
people, or like maybe it starts out one way, but you're not necessarily connecting with that person. I had a client who was talking to someone online and felt like this person was very like saying all the right things, and was very supportive and that kind of thing. And then and then she found out this person had been lying about who they were, and I'm not even sure how, but it was very frustrating because in the beginning it just felt so lovely and good, and then finding out the reality of it was tough. And so I do think if you're really finding that true resonance with someone else, um then it's genuine. It's not like someone putting on a bit of a facade, um or or an act, or performative, or that kind of thing. I know that a lot of times online people can pretend they're the best version of themselves all the time, or they can say a lot of things, but that doesn't necessarily mean they back them up. And so I think just really paying attention to whether or not that resonance is there, or paying attention to if it's off, is going to help you really understand if you've found like someone in your little soul family, um or if you've just kind of found somebody who maybe wants to be part of your soul family but isn't quite there.
Yeah, it's this line. I think it's one of the difficulties of being online. I've watched. I have my kids are all in their 20s and their spouses are in their 20s. So that's kind of the when I say kids, that's how old I am. Okay. Right. But they do a lot online and they make a lot of friends online. And um, it can be a challenge to find authentic, genuine, this is who I really am, because all of us want to be liked. All of us want, right? I'm not doing this podcast with bedhead. I got up, I got dressed, I put my makeup on, right? I look okay to be seen publicly, and that's part of what online presence is about. Is nobody can see the rest of my house. You can see this. That's it. That's all. It's this tiny window. It's a snapshot of me and my reality, but it's very filtered. So, uh, taking your time and really trusting your intuition, I think, is a big deal. Really going slowly, getting to know people. One of my favorite things about my astrology soul family member is how real she always is. There's no faults. Everything's great in my world. Genuine, honest. Today sucks. That's a soul family member, someone who is not putting on airs that, oh, I just meditate on pillows all day and everything just comes to me and my life is a perfect cloud that I float on. Run from that person, probably. So, right, you want someone that's more genuine, more open with the ups and downs of lives. And there are people that skew the other way, that they always are in crisis and it's always a problem, which I've also run into online, that you enter a chat of something you think you're interested, and you can run into those kinds of things online where people are not transparent and open. And so pay attention to those behaviors. When people show you or tell you who they are, believe them.
Absolutely. I think that's so fair. I also feel like sometimes online when you're connecting with people, like I love that you said your astrology soul sister is so real because I think sometimes we can get into spiritual bypassing, which is just like everything's great all the time and everything's happy all the time. We've definitely talked about that in past episodes, but I feel like sometimes there's something about keeping things really positive that also might keep them kind of shallow. I mean, being honest that you're having a bad day is a great way to just, well, first of all, like, be honest and be authentic, but then
Right.
also, like, know who else resonates with that or who else shows up for that, because it's such a fascinating, thing when people are having a bad day. And or they're going through something, whatever it is, and people can show up for you, or people can feel closer to you because you're just human and you're having a moment, or you're frustrated, or whatever it is. And so I feel like not that you have to be sharing everything that's wrong with you to be
Mhm.
authentic, but because you can, do whatever you want as far as like how much you want to disclose things. But there's something about being like really real and maybe even complicated that kind of takes that relationship a little bit deeper than if you just kind of think, I mean, keep things all like it's sunny and we're all happy and we're kind of pretending, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I had a friend when I was like 21, and we had been, I mean, really close friends. And she said to me one day, she goes, "We're not even friends." And I was like, really shook. She goes, "You never share anything with me. You
Oh,
always are helping me. You always show up for me. You're always, like we do so much fun things together, but I know nothing about you." Yeah, I don't really talk about me. That's not my nature, which is weird that I have a podcast. But in friendships, I used to never share anything about me because my childhood was so dark. I learned people don't want to hear that. People can't handle that. And so I put walls around what I share, and I would only share what I thought was palatable for other people. And that was a really growing moment for me. Of friendship is meant to be more transparent than that. If it's a soul family member, they should be expecting that you have bad days. They should be there for that and show up for that, whatever that is for you. Maybe it's health, maybe it's stress, maybe it's work. I don't know what it is for you that makes it a rough day, but we all have those. And having people around us that not only get it and support that transparency, but then help us in a way to get through it. Maybe it's just listening. Maybe it's saying, dude, you keep making the same mistake, and they're really honest with us. Whatever it is, right? But people that hold space in again, in their own authentic way of being real with us back. So I think that's a really important, I guess, green flag to be watching for is how transparent and authentic people are. That could be a potentially really great relationship, even if, right, you may feel that, wow, this is different, hopefully. And then that's a soul family member.
Absolutely. And, just like in life, whether it's, the knitting lady or
Right.
or the friend from high school or whatever, you sometimes sometimes your digital connections can go to real life, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you do get a chance to meet someone in person or hang out with them or whatever. um Sometimes it's a little bit stressful if the connection that you've been feeling online doesn't really translate to offline or to in real life. And so I think there's a lot of parts of that that can feel almost like, disjointed or, like, not aligning, and that's okay. You don't have to have sometimes people are much better suited to being online soul family members, or maybe they're just not really, maybe their social skills are a little clumsy or not as developed in real life, that kind of thing. And it's okay to be disappointed in that. I think sometimes you can outgrow people too. So whether it's like, oh, we're taking this from digital to real life, or it's, I don't know, I belong to this group, or we both belong to this group, and now we've both sort of like outgrown it now, or one of us has outgrown it, that kind of thing. I kind of think we should be, knowing that these people help us grow. And that doesn't necessarily mean we have to stay in the same place the whole time, because that's not really conducive to growth.
One of my, I guess, relationship advices that is pretty typical for me is about growth. I think it's really important to have a partner that grows at the same pace that you do. And soul family doesn't always grow at our pace. Some of them are slower growers than you are, and it's okay to grow with them while they're helping you with whatever that thing is, and then move past them. If you grow at a quicker pace, that's okay. They were okay with that before you all got here. That was part of that plan. So that's perfect that you get to grow with them for a time and then move on. It sometimes feels like you're betraying them or something, but you're not. And, use your intuition, get clarity on. I've had to do that where I've left groups or relationships that they're starting to detract from me. They're starting to be a very negative influence because they're just not moving out of that place. And I've moved past it so far that now you're pulling me down. And not that I'm judging that they are better than me in other ways or stronger than me or more advanced than me in other areas of life. Just in this one area, you're now harmful to me. Even if they're not abusive or, bad, you can still be harmful for someone's spiritual trajectory. So keep
That's
that
true.
keep that, present as well, that what's right now doesn't mean it's right in 5 years or tomorrow or next week.
Yes. And also, I think everyone's growing, but we're not all growing in the same direction or in the same way or at the same pace, like you were saying. I feel like sometimes your people that are really aligned with you, even if you don't hang out with them after a while, or even if you do grow apart, if you're really wanting like mutual growth for both of you, then you can kind of honor that. Maybe that was just for a time or a long time or whatever it is, and just kind of say, okay, well, I might miss them, and that's okay, or I might be disappointed, but also, I really want them to be happy, and I really want them to be able to, find their growth. And so, even noticing when you're a little stagnant is something that kind of comes through a lot with a lot with soul family. Is like sometimes they go, "Are you a little stuck?" Or "Are you, it seems like you've been doing this for a while." So they'll sometimes kind of bring things up to let you think about where, like, do a checkpoint, like you were saying as well. So I think that's really helpful. And just because you really care about someone or you feel very aligned with them doesn't mean that you can't just let them kind of go do their thing if they need to.
Yeah. And they may come back. I've had
Yes.
soul family that I felt like, wow, well, that's the end of that. And then 5 years later, right, they show back up and we get to grow get together for a time. So allowing people to take the space and allowing yourself to take the space sometimes means you get to have that lovely person back again at another
Yep.
time when you both are ready
Absolutely.
for it again. Know that it
Yep.
doesn't mean forever, right? You don't have to keep them forever and you don't have to say goodbye forever.
Yep. I think sometimes, like you were so right to kind of talk about like taking your time, especially when you're developing a relationship online with someone who you feel really aligned with, and especially like spiritually. There's no, there's not like a reason that everything needs to be really like accelerated or fast or that kind of thing. Usually just trusting your intuition and seeing like are my interactions with this person, whether we're like DMing or we're just, participating in the same group or whatever, are they like energizing for me or are they kind of draining? Who's kind of feeling energizing in a chaotic way versus in a this like an engaging I need to lean in more way, that kind of thing. And really just if something feels off, feel free to just honor that. It's okay. It also just feels like the you more you give any relationship time to grow, the deeper it can be. Sometimes when things grow really quickly, it doesn't mean it's deeper. It just means it's quick. And sometimes that's fun, but it isn't necessarily like maybe the thing that you're looking for in the long term, if that makes sense. But I think also when you're trying to find your spiritual people, you just need to be honest about where you're at spiritually. If you're feeling like, I don't know, I believe this, but I still have a lot of questions about this, or you're thinking like, or you're identifying with certain traditions or rituals or things like that, but not others, it's okay to talk about that, and it's okay to not even have all the answers. I feel like if you're pretending that you're more like spiritual than you are, or if you're pretending that you've just got it all figured out when you really don't, that the connections you make online will definitely be less meaningful or connective because you're being the performative one this time and you're the one who's kind of putting on a mask.
And sometimes we don't know what we don't know what we don't know, right? And I can look back on younger versions of me at whatever spiritual place I was at where I was very naive or very right. And so I think I'm being authentic, right? I didn't think I was keeping myself from that friend. I had no idea that that's how that was living opposite me, that other people were
Right.
experiencing me as this closed off person. I didn't feel like I was closed off. I didn't feel that way at all. So take the feedback from that you're getting online and be willing to give feedback. I think we're quick in our day and age to block people, write people off. Now, I'm not talking about toxic or abusive behavior, just general, oh, I don't like them. They said this one thing and now I'm never going to, I'm going to block their account. Okay, if it's atrocious, do that. But maybe instead you could be a person that could say, tell me more about what you meant by that comment and maybe assume less and ask more questions. I've learned to do that the older I've gotten. Didn't always do that when I was younger, but I do that now pretty consistently because I've found nobody speaks the same language. We all have our own definitions of words that we think are super clear and they're just not. So
Yes.
when you're being authentic, be curious. That's one of my engagement rules for online is be less judgy and more curious.
I love that, especially because if you're just asking a question, sometimes it'll just clarify what your assumption is too. Like maybe you're assuming that word or that phrase means something, but that isn't how that person even meant it. So I feel like it's good to question your own assumptions, but also to be curious and say, I need to know more about that, or can you explain that a little bit more? That kind of thing. I think that's so important. I also feel like there's so many great questions you can ask yourself. Like, just, if someone, whether they're online or in person, like makes you feel more like yourself, not
Mm.
necessarily, I don't know, a version of yourself or that kind of thing, but you can feel comfy just kind of being you, even on bad days. That is definitely a good question to ask yourself.
Yeah, yep. I really love this, and I love um bridging these two worlds, right? Bringing the digital into real life, and even taking real life into digital. I've been able to maintain important relationships because of Zoom, because of phone calls. I've moved like 30 something times. And so yeah, it's been a lot of moving, and that means I leave a lot of people. And that's been hard to feel rootless over and over and over. And so I'm very grateful for online because it keeps me connected to people that I feel like are soul family, or are, at least for a time, really necessary for my growth and for my spiritual practice, people that come around over and over and over. So I think that's another sign of soul family, is they keep showing up. Right. I've had people that I thought, well, that's that, right? We kind of really disagreed heatedly. And then they still show up
Yes.
because there's something more pulling you together. And both of you feel it. That's another sign. It's not one of, if someone says, oh, I had a dream last night and I know that I was your great aunt in, 17 past lives. Okay, well, that's great for you. The other person also has to reciprocate that feeling. It wasn't just me going, oh, I know you with Scott. Scott felt the same way. Or that's not going to work. So
Right.
don't be overly influenced, because there are people that wear the mask of I'm your soul family, as a way to gain artificial closeness with people.
Yes.
So be conscious that just because someone else tells you, I've had this spiritual aha about you and our relationship, maybe it's valid, maybe it's right. But if you haven't had a similar feeling, that's not your truth. So don't take that on. That's their truth. Let them carry that.
That's a great point because I think sometimes like, people will want to forge a relationship, but they they will use spirituality or that connected feeling as a way to make it seem like you don't have a choice
Mhm.
because they've already felt that this was meant to be, or this was, very guided or aligned or whatever they decide to say. And at the end of the day, you get to decide who's in your life and who isn't, to what extent they are, all of that. So know that even when you feel like that really great guided feeling or that really great, like recognizing someone instead of just meeting them, you can still decide if you want them in your life, whether they start online or they start in person. You still get to decide that for yourself. That is part of just having your own, spiritual autonomy, your own, just being your own person in the world.
And while there are predators that may use that tactic truly, right, to gain access to you, there are also people that are being genuine. They did have a dream about you in a past life or whatever, and that's for them. That's their growth, and they needed that information because you are the person that showed up for a time for them. And then you're moving on, right? Just because I've had this deep, profound experience from your soul to my soul doesn't mean you have to participate in that. That can be just for the other person, and that's okay too. So be really clear about, did you get that, or was that just for them? And that's great. It can be just for them. Or it
Yes,
can be just for you. You can be the person that had the deep experience and the other person doesn't reciprocate. That doesn't mean you're wrong or you're crazy or you're imagining it. It's just your growth needed that information and they didn't, and that's okay.
absolutely. Well, in the spirit of uh, bringing people together, whether it's soul family or community or all of the above, we're going to start doing a little Zoom live on- once in a while so that everybody you can meet other spiritual seekers. It's one thing to kind of listen to us or respond on social media, but it's kind of fun to meet in person and just be able to, bridge that gap of online and in person in a way that, helps everybody feel like, they can talk about spiritual topics with other spiritual seekers and kind of go from there. So we'll be giving you lots of info on that shortly.
We're going to keep it really informal and we're going to go in the flow. So we're not going to be too rigid about when or where, right? Just we're going to honor what we teach and trust that if you need it, you'll be able to show up on that date and time. So just, yeah, keep an eye out for that information. We're so glad you guys are here and part of our community. We're very grateful.
Definitely. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for listening and interacting online and your notes that you drop, your questions, your suggestions, all of that. It's very much appreciated.
See you soon.